Tonight, in a joint session lasting just 40 minutes, Congress counting state electoral votes.
Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 30 votes for president,
certifying the sweeping election victory of President-elect Donald Trump, who takes office as the 47th commander-in-chief. As president of the Senate, Vice President Kamala Harris overseeing the certification of her own defeat.
As they say, if you want to know somebody's character, play a game with them and see how they lose. Well, we all saw the character of Trump and MAGA when they lost in 2020 and refused to admit defeat. What they put our country through for the last 4 years, and specifically what they put Capitol officers through on that day, January 6, 2020. Well, we saw that it's really the Democrats that are the adult in the room, are mature enough to be able to handle defeat when they lose from time to time, as they did this time. January 6th this time was a smooth transition. And Vice President Harris actually was the one who had to oversee the certification. One of the few times the losing presidential candidate has to certify the win over Donald Trump. I mean, could you even have imagined Trump doing that? Of course not. He couldn't even have the decency to meet with the incoming President Biden in the typical talk and transition period. Never mind him being able to actually do the right thing. Congressman Raskin is very accurate and eloquent in his description of why it was so important for Harris to do that. Take a look.
I hope people remember the valor and the bravery of our officers, like Sergeant Cannell, who I think is going to visit with you, and Harry Dunn, and hundreds of officers who put themselves between the Capitol, the Congress, the Vice President, and a rampaging mob of thousands who had been sent by Donald Trump to try to overturn a presidential election. And those people were really on the front lines. And as long as we remember them and their sacrifice and their injuries and the fact that their lives and their families have been turned upside down, we won't forget that this was a real event. They're not going to be able to shroud it in all kinds of right-wing conspiracy theory and myths.
If you have any doubt of what MAGA would have done if Trump had lost, you can see what was happening before the election. Reporting showed that there was rampant online conspiracy theories already about the election being stolen, about there being fraud in the election, and anticipation of Trump losing. Because Trump had already kind of put that out there, and his right-wing echo chamber was just ramping that up as like a preparation for them to be able to use it if he lost. All of that evaporated overnight when Trump actually won. So that in itself should be enough evidence. As a lawyer in a court of law, that would be introduced as evidence that it really wasn't based on any fact, because if you were really concerned about fraud and you had these stories that you had to tell, that would have existed the day before the election and the day after the election. Whereas the Democrats didn't have these kind of false conspiracies out there before the election, and after the election, they relied on the election experts. We run our elections county by county. It's not a federal election. It's not even a statewide election. It's county by county. And we've relied on our lawyers. We've relied on our poll observers. I was a poll observer in Clark County, Nevada, where I don't live, but I traveled in order to be able to make sure that was fair and to kind of raise the alarm if I saw anything that wasn't accurate. And these poll observers were everywhere in this country. We had volunteer lawyers double checking, making sure this was counted correctly. We had the actual county election officials doing their job, and Democrats saw that there wasn't fraud to overturn the election.
312 votes. Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes.
Vice President-elect J.D. Vance sitting in the front row. We spoke to Harris on the way into the ceremony.
What should people take away from today?
Ironically, MAGAs, they just couldn't let it go. And Representative Nancy Mace, who's all about attention-seeking drama, decided to post that day Come hell or high water, we are here to certify President Trump's election victory today. As if the Democrats were amassing outside, as if Harris was calling into action. None of that happened, but she sounds like she wished it did happen. And then you have another quote by her saying, "We will not let them steal the election from President Donald J. Trump." Nobody was talking about stealing that election from Trump. But MAGAs, they love the drama. She wants there to be this. I mean, talk about criticizing somebody else for the thing that you do. Trump is really good at that. Evidently, Nancy Mace is good at that now, too. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted, "The election certification today is vastly different than 2020. No COVID lockdowns, high GOP engagement on election integrity, and a historic win by President Trump." Another way of them trying to remake facts with a completely different scenario. No talk about the fact that of people dying that day for the hours and hours and hours that the Capitol police officer had to literally fight back this mob of insurrectionists that were able to get into the Capitol, were able to actually stop the certification of the election.
From the violence 4 years ago, when a mob of Trump supporters attacked the Capitol, delaying the count for hours. A deadly riot where many were also injured, including Capitol Police Sergeant Aquilino Ganell.
Many of my colleagues were injured, to the point of even losing eyes. And these are the type of people that Donald Trump and his ally are trying to pardon.
Candidate Trump regularly downplayed the violence and his role.
That was a day of love.
And repeatedly suggested he might pardon some or all of the more than 1,200 people who pleaded guilty to or were convicted of crimes involving January 6th.
Now, she's talking about lockdowns, which didn't exist that day. They were all, the representatives were all there in the House. She was even one who didn't want to wear a mask as they were stuck there for hours. So she should remember they were all there. A complete remake. So not only are the Democrats kind of being the adults and doing the things as required by our Constitution and our democracy, because there was no fraud that was shown by all the lawyers who observed it and all the county officials that observed it, doing the right thing with certifying it. We have Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who like to be the spokespeople for MAGA.
The court's 5-4 decisions Thursday to deny the president-elect last-minute effort to delay sentencing in his New York hash money case set up a stunning moment in court on Friday morning, just 10 days before Trump will be sworn in for a second term. Judge John Merkin had already said he would not impose a jail term, and in sentencing Trump on Friday morning to an unconditional discharge, he noted the unique circumstances. To be sure, it is legal protecting effort to the office of President of United States are extraordinary, not to occupant of office. Merkin said, notice that those protections do not reduce to seriousness of the crime. The hearing underscored that Trump will be the first president to make office with criminal conviction written into their official record.